Men compete because women choose the winners. So as you guys know, if you listen to my content in any depth, you probably have heard me mention that I talk a lot online. And the reason why I do that is because it's a good case study, or it's a good study to understand how people feel about such things as feminism and, the rise of the influence of cultural Marxism, which does include feminism. It's all part and parcel of that, process by which the family unit is destabilized, men are attacked, and the idea of doing this is to equalize men and women, which is a false concept in and of itself. Men and women can never be equal because we are not the same in essence and in function, right? So that whole idea that men and women are equal, and this whole patriarchy came in as a mode of oppression against women, specifically targeting women. Like that whole thing is just nonsense. Because again, men and women are not equal in essence and in function. We are different entities. Yes, we are all human. We are equal insofar that we are actually of the human species, but in our gender, our essence, our function, the things that we do, our motivations, we are very different, and that's observably obvious. That's observable. It's not that shouldn't be up for debate unless we are talking hypotheticals, unless we are talking these new age definitions of words that liberals and feminists. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not like a conservative Republican. That's not what I'm about. I'm just about the truth, right? I'm not pushing any agenda, not pushing any political party, anything like that. But this whole, and it's coming from the left, right? Mostly, this is how cultural Marxism is forwarded in the mode by which, and conservatives, they don't like that stuff. Conservatives like traditional values. Conservatives and I agree with conservatives as far as that is concerned. I agree that men are men, women are women, and we have different functions. Now, if you want to blur the lines of what those functions are, if women want to work, okay, so be it. If women want to go out and do things that men do, such as bust their ass 40 hours a week, as opposed to being at home cooking and being at home, which is such a horrible thing, right? It's so, oh gosh, you're really in slavery because you got to cook bread, or you got to cook dinner, and you got to do, vacuum the floor and wash some dishes and do some laundry. Like, oh, it's such a horrible thing, right? Like, I'll take that over working 40 hours a week for some crappy boss or whatever. Working ain't easy. So women have kind of shot themselves in the foot with this whole equality thing. It's like, okay, now you can go. What they really want is they want the freedom to choose without the consequence of their choices. They really want to have no agency. So what they do is they blame the patriarchy in order to do this, right? So I talk, like I said, I talk online to people just to get to see how people think, get to see where people are coming from, and a lot of stuff that I hear is that there is such a thing as a patriarchy, which I don't believe there is. I don't think that that's a thing. I don't think that it's real. I don't think that you can demonstrably prove that there is this oppressive conspiracy by men to be a patriarchy and rule over society and rule over women. I don't think that there is such a thing as that. There is no uniform conspiracy by men that they want to rule and put women down. No, men simply have functioned. Our function as men has built the world. This is what we do. We build things. We create things. And it's not to say that women don't ever build things or create things. They do, just not on the magnitude or level that men do. Men have to, right? If we don't bring something to the table, we're not viewed as successful. Our genes won't get passed on. Women won't choose us. We have to do something. We have to work, right? Women don't have to. Women have the luxury of choice. You can work, sure, that's great. That first wave feminism allowed you the ability to have choice and to work and things like that. But you have a choice. Men don't have a choice, because if we don't work, if we don't bring food to the table, if we don't make money, our genes will not get passed forward. Women will not choose us. We will not be married. We will not find this quote unquote love, which again, as I say many times in many videos, there's really no such thing as love because of that fact right there. If men aren't successful, we will not have quote unquote love. Women will not choose us. Women will not love us, which is exactly what I'm going to talk about today. So there's this great guy, I think it's Twitter. Yeah, Twitter. It's at Tell Your Son This. This guy comes out with some great content, whoever he is, or she, I doubt it's a she, but whoever he is. He says, the reason men are so obsessed with achievement is because nobody gives a fuck about men, including the majority of men. The closest thing you can get as a man to being cared about is being cared about because you're useful. Implicit by the role of provider is not being loved for who you are, but what you can do. Let me read that again. The reason men are so obsessed with achievement is because nobody gives a fuck about men, including the majority of men. The closest thing you can get as a man to being cared about is being cared about because you're useful. Implicit to the role of provider is not being loved for who you are, but what you can do. This is the crux and the essence of everything I talk about. This is what started really started me on my red pill journey way back in like the early 2000s, when I became an adult and I became 19, 20, 21 and 22, and I realized, oh, I gotta work or else I'm nothing in this world. I gotta bring in money, I gotta do something, or else I'm not gonna, nobody gives a crap. And that's part of how I got red pill. That's part of how I quote unquote left, started leaving, the process of starting to leave the matrix and all this kind of stuff, as I realized men are just utility. And one of the first videos I think I ever made on YouTube was men are utility, or at least it's one of the concepts that I first started coming out with when I started making these videos. Men are only viewed as worthy or lovable as long as they're producing something, as long as we have resources, as long as we bring something to the table. Otherwise, we're not loved. And this is true in men do not receive unconditional love for the most part, unless it's from their mother or from their family, right? We don't receive unconditional love from the world. We don't receive unconditional love even really from our friends, and particularly and especially from women. We do not receive unconditional love. Women, however, do, and this is the main difference. So when I shared this, or when I started talking about it online, people came out, and let me read some of the things that they said. Let's see. Okay, so some people talk about the patriarchy because of male dominance, right? Because men dominate the world in the sense that, well, we created everything, we created the laws, we created government, we dominate in the sense that we are holding these powerful positions. Therefore, there has to be a patriarchy, which is stupid reasoning. And as I mentioned before, a lot of the reasoning that the left and feminism uses is like this hypothetical definition, like, oh, because I said the patriarchy is this, therefore this is the patriarchy. Like, well, wait a minute, I can't question your definition. I can't question your scenario that you are, putting men into. Like, that's lunacy. Just because you say there's such a thing as the patriarchy doesn't mean there really is such a thing as a patriarchy just because you said it. That doesn't make any sense, right? So this particular guy I'm talking to says both patriarchism and feminism are causing the downfall of many men. Modern feminism may be absolute crap, but men brought a lot of shit to the plate all by themselves because of, because of absolute male dominance translates to competition between males. So he's saying that men themselves created the patriarchy because they want absolute dominance. So there's some inherent thing in men that wants to dominate other men. And this is why men compete. No, that's nonsense. The reason why men compete is because women choose the winners. The reason why men compete is because women control the choice. They control the sexual market. They control the marriage market. And this is what women do. This is female nature. This is why sex is so hard to get. This is why it's so hard to get a girlfriend. This is why it's so hard to find love, because women are the arbitrators of this. Women choose the winners. Women sit around at the finish line and choose the winners. Right now, some part of winning, as far as being a man, is genetic. You're really good looking genetically. You didn't earn that. It's just what you are. This is why a lot of women end up getting knocked up by quote unquote loser men who have no jobs and no future, and they're bad boys because they're just hot. They're good looking, and that's just a fact, right? So it sounds like this guy's blaming men for something women are causing. So he's saying, oh, there is such a thing as a patriarchy because men are greedy inherently. Men are inherently trying to, rule the world because there's something within men that's just greedy, and that thing is not within women. Like, bullshit. It is. And this is really just, this is blue pill mentality. This is brainwashing. This is this blue pill, women can do no wrong mentality that a lot of men have, a lot of blue pill men have, a lot of these kind of, we would call them beta orbiters, or we would call them male feminists or male feminist allies, whatever you want to call it. These guys really believe, and they've bought into, and they probably don't even realize their own indoctrination. They don't realize that they've been brainwashed to really believe that men are inherently evil, or men are somehow inherently, there's something within men that's not within women, and that's just not true. There is absolutely greed in women, and that whole part of, essentially that whole choosing process of what I'm saying, is the greed within women. The difference is that women don't compete with each other for resources. Women compete with men, in a sense, for the highest value male. So women, and this is part of hypergamy, this is part of female nature, this is part of the choosing process. Women are vetting out the losers, and this is why women date a bunch. This is why women, and I say date, I don't say sleep around, because there's a difference between dating and sleeping around. Sleeping around is simply, usually for a woman, it's just for pleasure, right? To have fun, adventures is what they call it, whatever, right? But dating, a woman is really trying to choose a man. So dating is the vetting process, and women will go through men, just like we go through, I like this coat, or I like this hat. Yeah, after 6 months, I don't like this coat or hat anymore. I want a new coat or hat. This is kind of how women do it, but it's not that they just sometimes they do just get bored of the man they're with, but it's because of hypergamy. It's because they can't be happy with the man they're with unless he's the highest value male that they can acquire, that they can get. And this is female nature, right? So this is hypergamy, and this is what people like this guy, which is a great point that he's making, because I do believe people think this. They think that men are, the patriarchy is real because men are in competition with each other, because men are just inherently greedy and they need more. And this is kind of a liberal thing that, you don't need that mansion, you don't need this, and you don't need that. Well, the reason why men are doing that, the reason why men are programmed, whether psychologically or emotionally or just socially, to succeed at a very high level, make millions of dollars or whatever, is, on the one hand, they want a better life, but on the other hand, most of it is subconscious training that we learn that women won't choose us. A lot of the reason why I buy nice clothes, a lot of the reason why I have goals, a lot of the reason why I realized this, a lot of the, over the course of my life, I thought about this, and I was like, well, wait a minute, why am I doing this? What's my motivation for doing this? A lot of the motivation is so I can get a woman, so I can get sex, or so a woman will accept me. I can't just sit around and be nothing. I can't just sit around and do nothing and a woman will choose me. Like, that just doesn't happen. So this guy is blaming men for something that women are causing, right? Doesn't understand female nature. He has a blue pill mentality, blaming men for the patriarchy, saying that men are the reason that, there's wars, and men are the reason this, that. Well, really, I would say women are, because the motivation for men to have nicer clothes, to have nicer cars, to have nicer houses, to live in a mansion, to have lots of money, the motivation for that is so that he can get women. The motivation for that is not just power. Now, some men, maybe it's power, but it's for women. So the man can get the woman. If quality women, or and I say quality not in an intrinsic sense, but quality as far as good looking, and because this is what women use to leverage their power in the sexual market and the marriage market as well, is their looks, really. It's ironic that they say, I want a man who wants me for who I really am, and I don't want a man who's choose me for my looks and all this stuff, when they use their looks to leverage their power. Now, I think that a woman's looks, maybe you could argue that biologically it's there for a reason. Maybe you could argue that biologically, the reason why women are good looking or whatever, is so that they can get a high value man. Like nature has caused them to be good looking, or they have adapted that way. Whereas men have adapted, we have to have skills, so men have adapted to have diligence and perseverance or whatever. Whereas women, all they really have to be is good looking, then they can get everything they want. You could argue that that's nature. You could argue that that's nature at work, and that would be a good argument. But you have this concept where women say, I want a man who loves me for who I really am, but yet she doesn't really love the man for who he really is. He has to have resources. He has to be the best she can get for her relative looks or for her relative sexiness. And women know this better than anyone. And it's something that I've never liked. It's something that I think is wrong. I think people should choose for intrinsic values. Now, attraction is crucial. Attraction is very important. You should be attracted to the person, physically, because you're going to have sex with this person, you're going to be intimate with this person. That's a big part of a relationship. But on the other hand, like, that's all you're doing, if all you're doing is leveraging your looks so that you can get a high value man, something is wrong with you, not the man. And so I think that this whole process where men are trying to be the best value man, men are trying to be successful, so a sexy woman or a woman, any woman really, will choose them, is a sick thing. I think that's a sick thing. I really do. I think that whole process is sad. It's animalistic, but it does happen in nature. The bird is trying to build the best nest to attract the female, or the bird has beautiful feathers or whatever, and does this dance to attract the female. In carnivore species, they fight for dominance, right? And why? It's for the female. So the female will choose them. It's not because of their own greediness or their own thing, right? It's so the female will choose them. It's all about the choosing process. And this is nature. And some people will argue there's nothing wrong with that. Some people will argue and say, well, nature's nature. It's supposed to be like that because we can pass on good genes or whatever. I don't agree, but the species, you might, maybe objectively, hypothetically, you say, well, the species is successful because of that, because the men who were unsuccessful, the men without skills, and the men who didn't have resources got weeded out of the gene pool. Like, women didn't choose them, so therefore that weakness got weeded out. And this is why we're so successful today. This is why the world is the human species is so advanced, because of the female choosing process. So you could argue from an angle that it's a good thing biologically as far as the success of our species is concerned. But again, if you're talking about real love, if you're talking about women saying, I want you to love me for who I really am, then that whole thing is nonsense. Because if you're not going to love me for who I really am, whether I have money or not, then you yourself don't deserve to be loved for who you are. Right? So insofar as equality is concerned, if you're talking about equality, if you're talking about, I don't want to be judged for my looks, I'm not an object, I want to be known for something more than just sex as a woman, then don't judge a man. Then don't choose a man for his ability to earn income and things like that. So there's that. And let's see. Yeah, so you can't say that the patriarch. So women will choose a man based on his success. I kind of lost my train of thought for a second. Trying to get it back. Sorry, hold on a second. The patriarchy is something that was, hold on, let me just end this here, and then I'm going to come back in a second. I'll probably just make a second video, because I lost my train of thought. I want to study my notes and get it back for a second. Appreciate you listening. Stay tuned for part 2.